Okay, back with our second episode of Social Distancing with Dan Martin, and I see that my attempt at turning lights out is still leading to a lot of glare on my glasses, which is distracting to me. But at a time like this, do we really have to worry about glare? At any rate, uh, I was thinking about something. This is a book called Lazarus by Andre Malraux, his French name, and Malraux. He wrote this book with an interesting scene in mind. It's not based on an actual, or at least it doesn't follow the actual events of history. But this is what the inside of the dust jacket says. It says it is 1916 in Poland on the Eastern Front. For the first time in history, the Germans employed poison gas, attacking Russian troops near the Vistula River. The fumes destroy everything in their path: trees, grass, birds, insects, human beings. Benumbed by the unimaginable devastation, the German soldiers set about rescuing their Russian foes, carrying them out of the forest, blackened and turned to slime on their backs. Fraternity, which unites humanity and gives meaning to existence, has proved to be even stronger than the power of the state or the insanity of war. And so this book, Lazarus, which was given to me by a guy named Kevin McClellan, whom I knew when I lived in Rhode Island. Sorry, I'm trying to get rid of that glare. I don't have a teleprompter. I had to read just from the dust jacket, and I've got this glare that is affecting at least my ability to do this video. But basically, Malraux pits the insanity of war, this unimaginable suffering, against the fellow feeling of human beings. And he finds fraternity, which was one of the three big planks of the French Revolution, as being kind of the answer to the insanity of this suffering brought about by poison gas attacks. I'm taking these off because they're annoying me. So basically, I think part of the coronavirus frustration that I feel is that I do think we all want to just jump in, help, and my medical training is not great. I've done the first aid training associated with being a high school coach, and that's about it. So if I were to get on a bus and head to New York City, I would just get in the way at best. And that still would be a problem, because getting in the way could delay absolutely vital services being delivered to people that are in dire straits from a health perspective. And so, whether it's in my own hometown of Louisville or if it's somewhere like New York, there are limited ways that I can just sort of jump in. I think sometimes, we see the aftermath of a hurricane or something, and people are getting fresh drinking water to that area. There are people that go down and help repair things. You have groups like Rotary International, which does kind of the second wave of repairs after the initial strength of responses maybe subsided a little bit. And this is not that type of emergency. I mean, certainly there are things that can be done. I know Dare to Care, for instance, in Louisville, which is a food bank, needs people sorting food, and they have protocols in place to make sure that food sorting is as safe as possible. But beyond that, and beyond maybe making donations, if you come across latex gloves or breathing masks or things like that, it's really a frustrating thing, in that not only are we facing a crisis, but we're not able to go in and sort of demonstrate in a very profound way a person-to-person sort of contact, like, I care about what you're going through and I'm going to help you through it, because frankly that is one of the ways that the disease would spread more quickly, is if we're having much more face-to-face contact, hand-to-hand contact, etc. So this book by Malraux illustrates maybe a lot of our instincts, which is when we see a heavy amount of suffering, is that we want to get involved. And it can be very deflating and defeating not to be able to do that. And I think one other thing, Malraux, and I'll end after this, is he was quoted in a piece that was released, I think, shortly after he died. He was quoted, and he was talking about other French authors from the 20th century, and he said, absurdity used to be a question, and some of these authors have turned absurdity into an answer. And I think the question, yeah, like, what do you do with absurd levels of human suffering, whether it's from natural disasters, disease, war, et cetera? Though that has always been a question that sort of plagued humanity. How do we respond to those things? How do we make sense of them? And I think one of the challenges in this social distancing period, as well as seeing the numbers of infections, numbers of fatalities, even seeing things like, that the day after an order is given in a certain part of the country to social distance, that beaches are open. It's like, well, that is sort of it's an absurd approach to say, well, we're encouraging distancing, but we aren't. And so we are encountering this absurdity of, like, how is suffering happening at these levels? How, in this most wealthy country on the planet by a lot of metrics, are we having medical professionals having to treat people while wearing things like Halloween masks, et cetera? And so, we're confronted with that, and yet our ability to immediately jump in and make a difference, or put our compassion into, translate that into actions is oftentimes more difficult than one would expect. And so that's sort of like, we're pulled one direction just instinctively, I think, hopefully through our own fellow feeling for other human beings. But then on the flip side, the best medical advice in many cases discourages that type of intervention or interaction, to try that, because that type of work actually won't make things better in any sort of small, medium, or large capacity. So we're in this together. I wouldn't recommend necessarily reading Lazarus right now during social distancing. I definitely wouldn't read Camus' The Plague, or No Exit by Sartre. There are certain reading that you might want to skip, but I think that the wisdom of that, that fraternal or that fellow feeling that we have, that is something that we should hold on to and should promote. It's just, we have to find inventive ways to exercise it that also will correspond with the best medical advice that's out there. And that's not going to be easy, but we are inventive and people that have a great capacity for adaptation and survival. So, I'd say hang on to that as best you can. It's been a tough week for me personally. And I'm sure many of you have had, good days, bad days, good moments, bad moments. Well, the last 48 hours or so have not been my best moments in terms of just like where this is and where I'm at with it. But at the same time, when we're up, we can help others who are a little bit down. And when we're down, we've got others to lean on. So take care of yourselves and keep doing the things that can slow the spread of this disease, as well as keep your psyche in as good of a spot as possible. Thanks. Until next time, I'm Dan Martin.